What's up, Internet? You're tuned in episode 65 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two, sometimes three, best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And making his second appearance on the show on the channel this week, I should say, the Metroidvania master, Mr. Max Wright.
Good afternoon, or morning, or evening. I don't know.
Top of the time that you're listening to this. It's evolved.
Panicked there. Sorry.
Well, welcome back, Max. I'm glad to have you on the show this week because, of course, we are going to be talking about God of War Ragnarok. You and I have both been playing it. We're going to talk about our first impressions, as well as making some comparisons to the 2018 original. So I'm very excited because, of course, Steve notoriously did not catch up to play this game in time. And I you know, it's fine. I get it, right? You can't play every game that happens, right? But I had a moment last week, Max, where I realized that he took the time to play a PlayStation exclusive that you could play on Steam Deck this year. And when he could have played God of War, he played Days Gone.
Are you joking me? You played Days
Gone. Days Gone is a great game, and it's wildly underrated.
I'm not going to talk about quality of it. What I'm going to talk about is the fact that you had God of War Ragnarok coming out, and you run a podcast that talks about games, and you didn't want to talk about a hot new release. You wanted to play...
I run a podcast that talks about games with another person that talks about games, and Pete's played like 5 minutes of Elden Ring. Like, what's that about? That's like
5 minutes. No, 5 minutes. Yeah, I played 5 minutes of it. Okay.
Yeah, have you defeated any of the demigods yet?
I don't know. Who cares?
No,
Who
yeah.
cares?
I watched 10 minutes of a stream, and I'm pretty sure I know exactly where Pete's at with Elden Ring. So
yeah, he's not even made it to the castle.
Yeah, whatever. They're overrated. I don't know what to tell you. We're here to talk about God of War, okay? You know what, Max? When we do our Game of the Year retrospective, you can come through and argue for Elden Ring alongside Steve if you want.
I'll do it.
You're welcome. I think I know what the Game of the Year is because I'm playing it right now, and it's God of War Ragnarok, baby. Let's go. So we brought you in.
I thought you were going to say Vampire Survivors. Then that's why I was really excited that you finally played it.
So we got our boy Max here to talk about it. So I have somebody to gush about God of War with. Let's just jump into it. I wanted to start off with a couple of our just kind of like, because I would say this conversation will be predominantly spoiler free. But I figure we'll go like 100%. If you don't want to hear a single thing other than our opinions, we'll start off there, and then we'll get into a spoiler light section later on, where if you want to dip out, you can, you'll have your opportunity there. But where I wanted to start is for you, Max. How many hours in are you, and what is your experience with the original God of War 2018?
So I am currently 7.5 hours in, roughly. Can't say where I'm at, obviously, but yeah, I've been sort of playing. I got it quite late yesterday, and I've been playing all of yesterday and today, last night and today. So yeah, about 7.5 hours in, loving it so far, obviously. God of War, I didn't pick up God of War. I tried to play it when it first came out, but the PlayStation 4 was so loud, and I hated the DualShock 4, so I just bounced off it like I did with every PlayStation 4 game. So when I had my own actual PlayStation, PS5, and it came with the PS Plus collection, the first thing I did was boot up God of War and play through that. I think it's one of the first games I beat on PS5 other than the two Spider-Man games. Nice. And I loved every second of it. Like there's an entire, not to plug, but we did an entire podcast about this with the cross players, where luckily it was just as I'd beaten the game that I was able to just come on and then we just spent like an hour just gushing each other about it. And I think it just does everything right in a game. It's got good combat, it's got good incredible visuals, not just graphics fidelity, it's also got the design, it's got the heartfelt story, it's got the characters, the voice acting. It's just like I would give it a 10 out of 10 any day of the week. And I think it's one of those games that everyone should play at least once. Steve, even if like you put it on the story mode and you just play through it, I think I'd dip between the sort of the hard and the normal mode. But yeah, I got the platinum. Incredible game. What about you, Pete? Whereabouts are you in it at the moment?
I think I'm probably a little bit behind you. I think if memory serves, when I saved last night, I think I had just crossed 6 hours. So We're probably roughly in the same neighborhood. Kind of in that area where, you know, the game has a standard kind of intro, and then you kind of get the first part where it lets you off the leash. That's where I am right now. And I think if you're playing, you'll know what I'm talking about.
How do you feel about those intros in sequels to games? Because I remember getting frustrated a little bit by it in Horizon Forbidden West, because I was sort of like, well, I kind of know a lot of these mechanics, especially considering I went back to the first game for like a bit of a refresher and a taster.
So I think this game does a really good job of it, and it works in the same way that I think the Last of Us Part 2's intro works, because unlike Horizon Forbidden West takes place in, I think it's like 6 months or something like that after Zero Dawn. Like it's not a significant stretch of time. So I think having that whole like, oh, Aloy, what you been up to the last couple months? And it's like the same shit that when you left the game, right? Like it's like exactly what you figured she would have been doing. So I feel like that, to me, makes that feel a little bit more like this is for new players, and if you're a new player, you probably need this boilerplate information. The nice thing about God of War is that in Ragnarok, it's been several years since, I think it's about probably the amount of time between 2018 and 2022 Ragnarok's release. It seems like about that much time has passed. Kratos' son Atreus is quite a few years older, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the spoiler light section, because I have a lot of thoughts about how they've handled that writing. It's good thoughts, but so I think for me, the intro, it feels less about like, here's how to play the game, and it's more like, okay, so what has changed for these characters since I last saw them? And the answer is quite a bit. Many things are the same, but way, way, way more things are not, right? And like there's a lot of natural growth between the main characters that I think exploring the new dynamic and kind of understanding like, okay, who are Kratos and Atreus now versus where they were when I left them off at what felt like the end of the journey, but you're realizing as you play Ragnarok was only the very, very beginning of the journey, right? So I think it threads those two narratives together really nicely, actually.
Yeah, I think mechanically, like you said, Steve, it's, I know how to play the game. For me, it'd only been 2 years for me, and I was still like, okay, I need to get used to the two top buttons being the attack buttons. I need to get used to recalling the
Leviathan axe.
Recalling the Leviathan axe, thank you. I need to get used to blocking with L1 as opposed to L2. L2's framing, and it does
climbing with circle and dodging with X is another one that like feels...
Oh my god, okay, right. So I need to finish Elden Ring before I play this game, because otherwise I will get
You'll unlearn
so confused.
You can remap controls pretty well. So if there are,
I really miss the days where there's like different configs, and like the Halo used to do it, right? They would have like the Southpaw and stuff. Like you would be able to have they would have built-in configurations. It'd be really cool if there was like a Souls-like configuration, and it just was
a lot of the buttons
what you expected it to be.
But I think the intro does a good job of, like Pete says, sort of bringing you back to what these characters are up to now, and you sort of, it's very much a show don't tell kind of thing. They don't do like a whole, in the last 4 years we've done this. It's very much like, here they are now. You can sort of pick up contextually and from through what they're saying, what's been happening, what they've been doing, and then also it just sort of eases you into the game a little bit with the combat and stuff. And then when you leave the very introduction section, which is, a lot of it plays out very similarly to the first game, when you leave that area and you're out as Kratos, sort of doing your first little bit of moving around, you start to see where the layers have come in, and there's now the Blaze of Chaos. You have them from the very beginning, and how that folds into traversal and stuff. So it feels like a very natural sort of progression of the game, and that introduction does a good job of just getting you up to speed and also teaching you the new stuff at the same time. So yeah, I think I've handled it really well.
Yeah, and I like how it treats both of those things equally. Right, where it's kind of like, okay, like, in case you forgot, here's how combat works, but then it's also like, here's this new sled mechanic with these wolves, and like, take advantage of that.
Yes,
It kind of inundates you in those things pretty quickly. Although I wonder how much we're going to see them later on, but I don't know. I imagine at some point we will. So in terms of I guess comparing it to the original, are there any things that have really like stood out to you? Because I think to give my context for the original, right? I played it on PS4 a little after launch. I bought it and played it at launch, but to be transparent with you, it was a brand new game right at the time I started dating my now wife. So video games kind of took a bit of a backseat, and I got to it a little bit later and played through it. And I definitely echo your thoughts, Max. Where I think the original is definitely I would say qualifies as a masterpiece in my mind. Right, it's one of those games that I think everybody should try. And it is because I think it's one of those games where there really isn't one thing that stands out as being like what you come for. Right, where it's like it's a great story, it's a great acting performances from the main cast, great art direction, great combat, just overall a really good aesthetic, so it's one of those games that fires on all cylinders. And I think coming into this one, I was wondering if it was going to suffer from I think kind of what we saw Horizon suffer from earlier this year, where it's like a bit of a sophomore slump of like, even though I would argue that Forbidden West is, at least mechanically in every single way superior to the original, I think because you're already familiar with that world, it lost a little bit of that like shiny new toy wow factor, right? And I wondered if God of War would struggle as well in that regard of like, okay, we've already seen the like adult mature Kratos thing. Like, does that still hit the same way? And I think it does. And I think in some ways it's already hitting harder for me because I've grown so much with those characters already to come into this game and see. And again, I'll save my full thoughts on this for the spoiler light section, but to see that their dynamic is changing as Atreus is getting older and becoming, more independent. Mm-hmm. And how that has impacted Kratos' personality is really awesome. Like, I think there's been a profound amount of growth for these characters off screen that feels earned and natural because of what we went through in the first game.
It's the same with Mimir. Him being so folded in so heavily from the beginning, and the way that he's been wrapped up in this family that they've now become, it's just really like nice. It's just really like it's a different dynamic. It's nice. It's heartwarming. They're not just barking at each other. They're not currently in a situation where they need to. We must go here. We must do this. They were just living a life together. And I think it feels like a good sequel should, where you jump right in, and I'm talking about movies specifically, like a good sequel movie where you jump straight back in. There's no, here we're going to introduce a bunch of new characters. We're going to have to do some sort of like convoluted way to make a sequel. The sequel was already sort of pre-planned. It was sort of baked into the end of the first game. So to come straight in at the point that we were all expecting, and for it to feel like it does is really, really great.
Yeah. I definitely I'm right there with you. I think like they've got something really, really strong here. And it's like it's hitting exactly the way I want it to, where like it's the only game I'm thinking about right now, and like as soon as we're done with this, I'm gonna scarf my dinner down and play some more of it before it's time to go to bed, So yeah, I think it feels like a meaningful improvement in every sense of the word, in a way that I really was not sure that it would be able to live up to the bar that it set, and I'm very, very pleasantly, I don't want to say surprised, but I'm glad to see that it falls on that side of the fence for me.
I've seen a lot of people say that it feels like more of the same, that it feels like it's a continuation, and it is, if you like that first game, this is like, it is that game again. Do you see that as a negative or a positive? Do you agree with that sentiment, or do you feel like this is a step up and an improvement from what you've played so far?
So I think when I immediately started playing, I said to my mate who's a big fan of God of War, I said, it feels like more God of War, but like, who's going to complain about that? Because it's really good. However, not to
apparently a lot of people can complain about.
Well, yeah, but not to jump into the spoiler stuff too much. But I feel like the game has been evolving for me and will continue to evolve as it goes on. And I think that it's it's not so much like a sort of a $60 DLC pack or $70 DLC pack or whatever sort of people have said about this kind of thing. But I think that it's picking off exactly where the last game left off. It's not like a Metroid game where at the start of the game Samus loses all her powers and you're starting from the beginning. It's not like a JRPG where you've all of a sudden gone back to level 1.
It reminded me a lot
of the stuff
of the Arkham games, where like with
Mhm.
Arkham City, you started with everything that you had
You had all
gained
your-
from Arkham Asylum, and it feels like a very natural sequel.
Yes, well, there are things that have been reset. The skill tree, you don't have all of your armor and stuff like that, which the narrative they sort of explain it. But you do have the sort of the skill sets that you picked up, and you have all of the key weapons you picked up and stuff at the very beginning. And I feel like it is more of the same because it is the same. It is a direct continuation, but I feel like from what I've played so far, it is going to evolve, and it has been evolving quite nicely so far. But yeah, I do feel like it is more of the same. But I loved God of War, so like to be able to play more of that, continue on the story, and iterate on that is probably better than if they were to just reboot it or completely start from scratch or try something new when they didn't need to. They've still got a story to tell with the same characters.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, I don't know. I think that's a really reductive way to look at the game, to be like, oh, it's more of the same. Well, first of all, it's a sequel to a game, right? So like, isn't that inherently true with about every sequel for the most part, right? Like, yeah, like Breath of the Wild, for example, right, was like a real wrench in the gear of the formula that had been established for Zelda, but it's still a Zelda game, right? And it's still more of the same in a lot of ways, as well as it is new. And I think to argue that this game has nothing that's like fresh or iterative is I think is disingenuous, because like, yeah, like the core systems are the same, the core cast is the same, it's a direct sequel, so they should be. But in terms of just like the few hours that I've already put in, right, there's a lot more enemy variety and biodiversity. I was showing some footage before of like the opening of the game, and like you're in, this like harsh, cold environment, and like, the first, and I won't spoil what it looks like, right? But like the first area that you go to after that has a completely different biome. The enemies are totally different. They fight totally differently. There's an enemy that was introduced there that was like small and fast and hard to hit, and like fights totally differently than most of the other enemies that I encountered in the first game. Yeah. So just like little things like that, where I feel like there's already iteration in a way that feels meaningful. And I have a theory about where the story's going that I think might shake things up quite a bit as well. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like people find a way to complain about anything, right? But, like, I would agree that it's more of the same, but I think 2018 is a 10 out of 10 game. So if you're complaining about it being more of that, then that to me feels more like a you problem than a Ragnarok problem,
Yeah, it's more of the same, but it's more of the same but better. Which is important. A lot of the traversal stuff, which you spend a lot of time traversing, trying to solve puzzles and stuff. They've not just done a whole new set of puzzles. They've added new puzzle variety to it. They've added new ways to get around, new things to look out for, and like you say, new biomes. So you're thinking differently, and it's just like there's more God of War, which I said earlier is a good thing. So yeah.
Agreed. So we're going to talk more about that in a second here, but let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Account, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we appreciate you keeping the mics on this and all of our sister shows. If you guys want to go become a Patreon supporter, if you want to find us on Twitch, if you want to find links where you can write into the show, be a part of it, however you want to get involved, flipscreen.games is our website. That is the best place for you to go and find us all over the web. So I hope you will go find us somewhere and enjoy some content. And we thank you for tuning into this week's show. So now we're going to get into the spoiler light section. We'll try to keep it predominantly, I would say, to the first 5-ish, and change hours, right? Like the intro of the game and the very first realm that you travel to.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to give a definitive point. I guess you can't without properly spoiling anything, can you? But
let's say this: there
Go on.
is in the first realm, you go to a city to meet a character, and that is the first time that the game really opens up. I'd say that area is probably where we'll cut for now.
That's
the
fine by
first post intro story beat.
Okay. Can I talk about things that took place during that you said where we get to the world opens up,
Side quests and all?
Yeah,
I would say yes. Let's talk about that stuff.
Cool, good stuff then.
Good. All right, so you've got an idea. We're gonna keep it very spoiler light. I really don't think that it's anything that's gonna be a surprise to you if you've paid attention to the marketing material. So I think you can stick around for this conversation. But if you want to go in totally fresh, here's your opportunity to jump. We'll catch you next week. And we're going to have a special God of War episode next week if everything goes to plan. So make sure you come back for that one.
I will say check the chapters, because I think there's probably going to be some more talk at the end, right? About
That's true. Yeah. We're gonna talk about some other games at the end that Steve's been playing for review as well. So jump ahead if you want to get to that. So I think I do want to talk a little bit about the writing, because we were kind of dancing around some of that stuff, and I think that's the thing that is the strongest in this game. I think it's the thing that was the strongest in the original as well, even though it has great gameplay and great everything else. The story is, I think, really very moving, and I think it's one of the better narratives in gaming, period. Particularly when you put it in the context of like Kratos as a video game icon, and what that era that he comes from, that he represents, and then how that game really was about the character growing emotionally and moving beyond what he had been, and I think there's an argument to be made about how much actual emotional growth he has in that game versus like how much it hints at those things happening. I think in Ragnarok, it squarely proves that those slight little subtle changes we saw in Kratos in 2018 were roots for major changes to his personality.
Yeah, I think a lot of that also comes down to the way Atreus has developed as well. Like, he's so much more of a mature. He's sort of going off on his own. He's sort of doing his own things, and he's like rebelling against his father in some ways, but not in that there's a schism between them, but more that like he's becoming his own man. He's becoming his father's son.
Yeah,
and that how Kratos is reacting to that, and how he is maybe holding the leash a bit looser as well in certain ways. And
there's that moment
where he obviously cares about him.
That moment between him and Mimir that I really loved, where Mimir is like, "Hey, he's gonna be his own man either way. So you can either get behind him and let him lead, or you're gonna lose him." And like, you see that in the way he deals with Atreus, right? Where like he's not as strict, he's not as harsh, and I think part of that is because he's softened a lot as a person, but also he respects him and he sees that he's growing into a man that he can be proud of, and that like he's already setting himself up to be a better person than Kratos ever was,
I think where Kratos was the driving force of the first game, I feel like Atreus is going to be the one in this game. I feel like Atreus, his growth, his actions are going to be the ones that really push it forward, because as we learned at the end of the first game, he's a very important character, and we need to know where that develops to. And I don't think we're going to get a game where they dance around that again. I think because this is the end of that saga, we're going to see him take on the mantle he's supposed to and be the guy he's supposed to be. And I think Kratos is really going to be there to guide him now, as opposed to pulling him up. He's going to let him grow, which has been great. Like you say, like the conversation with him and Mimir, you can tell there's even a bit at the start that you read, if you read Mimir's biography bit that Kratos writes about him in his little journal, where it says that there are a few men that I would call brother.
He says, in my time, there are a few men I would call friend, fewer still I would call brother. And I love that. I was like, wow, that's a profound amount of growth for him.
Yes. However, on the flip side for Kratos, what I am looking forward to is there clearly is more of the old Kratos coming out in this game. And I don't think they're undoing the work from the last game. I think they're making a point of you need to be the man you used to be right now. Like this isn't the time that you were and spent the last like when Atreus was growing up when you were with your wife. Like times are changing. We need the old Kratos back. But not even it's not even the protagonists that are telling him this. You know, it's villains. They want Kratos back, and I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see him develop back into his old self. Not to get rid of any of the stuff from before, but we're going to sort of see elements of that, and you can already see that in the way that he uses the chaos blades as to climb up things and having them as a main weapon again. There is elements of old Kratos and old God of War that are being pulled into it. I think it's really nice to make this sequel not just what happened next, but also what came before it that is important to what's coming next.
It's interesting because it feels full circle to me. Like it feels like I feel like him using the Blades of Chaos, it feels like a natural extension of how the characters matured, right? Because you think about the first game, like that's a moment where he goes and pulls the blades out again and like confronts his past in a way that he was trying to get away from it. And now I feel like he's just at peace. Like he seems wiser. And like you talked about there's that side quest with Mimir and like this whole background that we don't have to get into everything, but it's about him basically when he was working for Odin, he convinced the dwarves to fuck themselves over basically and he helped them become subservient to
he was
Odin
basically a
and
tyrant from what I can tell from all these from the side quests I've done so far. It's Mimir being faced with his own past, and I think Kratos had that in the last game, but we'd already seen that because the games existed, whereas for Mimir we're basically seeing the aftermath of the things that he had done and how he now has to atone for them and how and Kratos is helping him do that because Kratos has done the same thing.
Right.
And I think it's a great way to explore their relationship.
Yeah, and it's a great way to show the ways in which Kratos has matured, right? Because like they have a whole conversation about it and he says to him, he's like, look, man, like you can't beat yourself up for this because it's like ultimately like you were tasked with an impossible task, right? And you made decisions you wouldn't make now, but it's also like not a cut and dry situation where there was an easy victory, right? Because like if you didn't do what you did, Odin would have annihilated their entire race anyway. So like, like are you the good guy in this story? No, but like you're also not a cut and dry villain either, right? And like that's Kratos in a nutshell, right? Like he's a dude with blood on his hands. He's done some awful, truly bad things in his life, but he's grown past them and like he's a different person than he used to be, and like being a father has helped him mature, right? It's softened him, it's made him kinder and more patient, and like even there's that moment in the First Realm where there's the thing with the train and it like hits this troll, and in his biography, the thing you were talking about, the little thing where he makes his journal notes, he mentions that the reason he killed it was to put it out of its misery, right? Because he felt he was thankful that it was there because it probably saved their lives, but like he felt bad that it had to die for no reason. That is not the Kratos that we knew in 2018. He said the exact opposite of that to Atreus on the beginning of their journey, right? And it was him seeing the kind of person he was turning his son into, that it changed who he was and the way that he looks at violence and like and his purpose and like place as a god, right?
There's a bit in the third quarter of the original game where you see Atreus start to take on some really dark elements of Kratos. You see him sort of become more like we need to kill, we need to do, and the things that he was saying, you kind of go, uh-oh, like this kid's going to go bad. And Kratos has learned through his own experiences to curb that and to stop that. And the Atreus we see now is not the same, potentially on the edge of tipping over into being an evil god. Because Kratos knows what gods are capable of. He's had to kill so many of them for that reason. Kratos has obviously learned from that, and Atreus has learned from that because of that. He's brought them up better.
Yeah, I mean, he's like even more empathetic and kind than he was when he was younger, which is like that's not usually how that goes for young men. So that's solid. I there was a moment that I don't want to spoil for people. Where again, I was thinking in the beginning of the game, right, the sophomore slump, will you be able to hit the same emotional beats? There's a moment with Atreus very early in the game that I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Max.
I do.
That's very emotional, right? And I that got me, man. Like that had me in tears, you know. And I was like, like the ways in which I feel like that this story is really about, like, you know, like you said, it really is Atreus's narrative, but I think it's just as much like about what it's like to be a parent and watch your kid grow up. And the way in which you mentioned this in the spoiler free section, where like the opening of this game echoes the original in many ways, but like the defining difference is that Atreus doesn't really need Kratos as much anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, like the very beginning, they're hacking down the tree to burn the mum. This is the first game I'm talking about. They go out on a hunt.
He teaches them how to hunt.
Teaches them how to hunt. Yeah. Whereas this game is very much they're getting materials. They're going back home, and then, Kratos is like, it's time to hunt. Atreus says no, and Kratos goes, fine, all right. Like, he knows they need to, but it's not so much I'm saying we're hunting, so we're hunting. He's like,
right.
He's his own man. I'm going to let him make a decision.
Yeah.
And obviously, like you said, the thing he was dealing with at the time, the older Kratos wouldn't have put up with that. He would have said something like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. You need to put it behind you. A warrior."
He says that in the book too, right? He says, like, in the past, I would have told him to close himself off from what he's going through, but like he's not. He doesn't feel that way anymore.
Yep.
You know,
and it's a much less significant loss for him as well. His mum just died. They've just burnt his mum, and then he's gone, we're going out hunting. Whereas this situation, again, won't talk about it, is much less severe, but he's also then not then gone, grow up, man up, we're going out and doing this. He's given him space, and that says a lot about Kratos and how he's grown.
Yeah. And I think even like the way he talks to Brock and Sindri, right? Like there's a level of like, he wrote in the book about Brock, he's like, I find him to be a fairly agreeable company. just like, all right, that's pretty good for him, I guess.
The whole cast, I think, is just great, the way they all work together. And the way that Kratos seems much more accepting of them now, whereas before he was very much like, we're doing this alone. Now he seems much more willing to accept help, and he's more willing to accept Mimir. In fact, he leans on Mimir so much now, because when Atreus sort of goes off on his own thing, he sort of leans on Mimir for advice and to bounce his feelings off of, which Kratos would never share his feelings. But now he's like, I'm worried about him, I'm doing whatever, it's nice.
I love the moment too in the beginning. He goes inside and he goes to like get in bed, and he's clearly bothered, and he's like, Mimir's like, hey, you okay? And he's like, use your words, brother. Like, and I love
there's a lot of grunts.
I feel like there's like multiple characters now who've been like, okay, Kratos, like, tell me how you're feeling, and he's like, okay, here's how I'm feeling right now, you know. And it's like, yeah, you know, like he's come a long way, I think, in a couple of years.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think all that just leads to the world feeling so lived in, you know, and feeling like it's like it's very comfortable, you know, like it's like stepping back into a dynamic that feels homey and comfortable.
Yeah, but also so different because of the Fimbulwinter. The area that is Kratos' home is covered in snow and ice. It's unrecognizable. And then luckily you then are immediately transported somewhere new, which I think is a great way to handle it, as opposed to retreading a lot of the same ground to get to a new place. Because the way God of War set up, you go to the Lake of the Nine or whatever it's called, and then you go to the World Tree, and then you can travel between the dimensions. And I thought, okay, we're going to have to do that again. But I think it's very clever the way that they have sort of just circumvented a lot of that repetitive stuff and just jumped straight into here's a load of new stuff.
Yeah, agreed. So to talk a little bit about the like gameplay and performance side of things, I'm very, very pleased. Like the game runs beautifully. Like it looks fantastic. and I like it's a very clean, smooth 60 FPS.
Mm-hmm.
Really enjoying that aspect.
I have had one crash.
Okay.
But it was just one crash that I've not also back but had replicated since, so it's fine. But the visuals are again perfect. I was always amazed. So when I played God of War on the PlayStation 5 when it first came out, I had it in 60 FPS. But it was before the update came out for PS5. I beat the game, got the platinum. Then like a week later, they were like, "Here's the PS5 update with 4K 60 FPS."
Ain't that always the way?
Yeah, I was like, I'm not going back to it. So, but I'd got the platinum. I played through the whole game in 1080p at 60 FPS. And I remember the whole time thinking, how have they done this? You know, I've played games in 4K on my PC that aren't as clean and as detailed and as crisp and as stable as this. Like it's magic. And I don't know how many games can say that they are as well built as this game. Like the last game, I mean, even like Elden Ring or whatever was played with like there was performance issues and there were sort of some bugs and stuff like that. The first game and this game they're just works of art. They just use every trick in the book. I don't know what they do. It looks phenomenal. It's so detailed. The design's incredible. The sound is so good. Yeah, it's so impressive.
Yeah, I think it's really a technical marvel. And gameplay wise, you know, like we said earlier, the variety of enemies has been really pleasing. Because I think that's one of the most legitimate complaints about the first game is that there is a lot of repetition in enemy types.
Yeah, most of the bosses are the same. Even like you get towards the end of the game and you're like, oh yeah, here's this really cool. What is this going to be? Oh, it's just the same first boss again. Just it's got more health.
Troll,
or even the Valkyrie fights. Yeah, even the Valkyrie fights where it was just like, okay, another Valkyrie. You get to the Valkyrie Queen and you're like, oh, it's just another Valkyrie that can do everything the other Valkyries can. Like for a game that the previous entries were about fighting gods and each god had their own unique weapons, their own unique, way to kill them and stuff like that. I can see why people who had come from those games and come to this to the new God of War might complain that, oh well, there's not enough of that variety. But I feel like this game so far, like you say, has tackled that. Not just enemies, like you said about bosses as well. How there's not just one boss.
5 different bosses already, and each one has been totally different, right? Like, they've had totally different powers, different attack patterns. Some are fast, some are slow. Some, it's easier to fight with the axe. Some it's better with the blades. Like, it feels like they took that criticism well, and adjusted.
There's a little bit of repetitiveness. Like I have fought the same sub boss twice, but I think that's like an ongoing thing. And there's also an enemy type in a later bit of the game that you'll see that comes up quite a lot, like almost like a mini boss, I guess, but just like a bigger version of an enemy. That every time I come across it, I was like, oh, another one of these. But it's fine because there's only like 3 or 4 of them. But it's just it's not a boss; it's just an enemy. But yeah, I think a lot of the boss variety and also just the different designs, like you say, they're faster. They're some of them do different things. Some of them have different attacks, and yeah, it's nice working out a boss again. Because the trolls were just it's the troll again, great.
And I will
also
say
Draugr. It's Draugr.
Yes, right, yeah. I'll say this: the big cinematic battle that happens in the beginning that kind of echoes the fight that you have in the first game. That was sick, and I am very excited for the next one.
There's something that happens in that fight that I don't want to spoil it, but the bit where how am I going to spoil it? Where you think it's all over, but it's not.
Yeah, there's a really cool phase shift, and it happens. There's more than one, so we're not spoiling anything, I don't think. But yeah, there's one that is surprising, and you're like, oh shit, okay.
Really unique, and it reminds me again of Batman Arkham Asylum. But maybe we can talk about this after. There's a bit in Batman Arkham Asylum that I was immediately brought back to, and I was like, it's just using because for a game that is immersive and it's all one shot and it's so cinematic, to then use the medium of video games in such a way, again, not spoiling what it is, I think was just really clever. I love it when games do that they can be meta and self-referential, and they don't have to be pretend like you're playing a movie. It can be a video game, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
but yeah, sorry, the boss fight was fantastic. I think,
so good.
Like you said, it was a lot like the boss fight from the first game, and it was Almost the setup was almost identical as well, but it really does. It paints the characters involved in a really like interesting light, not the way I was expecting them to be portrayed.
Yeah, agreed.
But also, I think, yeah, like you say, for what's going to come, if that's the first one, and they've obviously learned from their mistakes from the first game, where the first fight maybe was one of the highlights, as opposed to, maybe there was the big cinematic fight with the dragon later on in the game, that was also really good. Yeah, hopefully they're going to continue on that and keep doing that enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident the ramp up of this is going to be something else.
Yeah,
because they know it's the end of this story, so I think they're going to want to go all out.
I think they're going to want to do God of War. I think is what they're hinting at to me from just that first hour. I think they want to. They know what God of War's about. They know they avoided it in the last game because it was a different Kratos, but now Kratos needs to be Kratos. I think they're going to go full God of War.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, like I said, we're going to talk a lot more about God of War. This game is fast approaching the top of my Game of the Year list, so definitely expect more conversation around it in the weeks to come, particularly next week. And I'm not going to spoil because we're still lining up some of the details, but if it all goes to plan, it's going to be a very special God of War Ragnarok episode, so keep it tuned for that. So, we're going to move on from the God of War talk here. And we're gonna
bring Steve back.
Yeah, let Steve get a word in edgewise here. Hey, buddy. So you've been playing a little indie game called Case of the Golden Idol, and I know when we've talked about it, you compared it a bit to Curse of the Obra Dinn, I believe, right?
Yeah, Return of the Obra Dinn. It is so much like that game in terms of gameplay and style, I will say. I think it's kind of the start of a new genre of games. I think Return of the Obra Dinn was something unique. It was something fresh. It was a different take on like a mystery game. I think this is like if Dark Souls and Demon Souls started a genre. I think Return of the Obra Dinn started like the Din-like games, and I feel like this is the start. This is like since Return of the Obra Dinn, I've been looking for something similar. And I feel like this is what's come closest. We were sent a code for this, so just full disclosure, but I was planning on picking it up anyway. I'd heard Jason Schreier talking about it, and I had seen a bunch of folks absolutely raving about this game, and oh my god, it's so good! It's really really good. The core gameplay is so simple. You are in this kind of point and click adventure, and you're clicking around the screen at these different anchor points, and you have to find words, and those words end up down in the bottom section on your screen. And when you find those words, you're first in exploration mode. You're like looking around the area. Then you go into thinking mode, and you have to match up like names to people. You have to figure out what happened. Every single chapter of the story is a different murder. Everyone's obsessed with this golden idol statue, and it has like some magical powers that seem to be revealed as the story goes. I'm on, I think, chapter 3, like act 4, something like that. It's really, really good. I really hope you'll play this one, P. I know I think I gave you a code for it as well. I'd love to do like a deep dive on it because this is something special. It really makes you think. It really makes you feel smart when you figure it out and dumb when you can't figure it out because the answers are there in the environment and you just need to find them. There's like one where you're at a dinner party and you need to figure out where everyone sat on the table because someone's been poisoned. So you know where the person who's been poisoned was because obviously they're the dead person, but one person wanted to be sat next to the pretty lady, so he bribed someone, and there's like a letter that said that he wanted to be sat there, and then you have to figure out that one person's a vegetarian, and you have to find that information out, and it's all in like letters left around the environment and around the scenes. And there are some words that are red herrings, and you'll end up with more words than you need to solve the case.
I
And
like
so
that.
you end up like thinking, oh, this person was like, this person fell off of a ladder, but they didn't actually fall off a ladder, they fell off of something else. So you need to be able to like kind of find multiple things within the environment that could match the specific scenario. And it's figuring out what the scenario is. It's a really, really cool concept, similar to what Return of the Obra Dinn was, which was figuring out how every single person on that ship died and how and what happened. You were like I think an insurance person that was going on to figure out like the situation of on the Obra Dinn, and you just walked around the scene and walked around the environment. It was like killed by the captain, and but you didn't know who anyone was, and you had to piece all that together. It's the same thing. You're going into these scenes, you have no idea who these people are, but you can click around the environment, you can click onto the people, you can see what items they're carrying. There's like some sections where you don't know anything other than the amount of money they're carrying, and there might be something around the environment that tells you information about them based on how much money they have. And like there's such it gets like very, very intricate, and it starts off really simple. You're in like one room, and then eventually you get to like three, four, five rooms, and you're clicking around these like big scenes and big houses, or like a stables and like a stable house, and it's really, really good. I love the visual style, I love the gameplay. I highly recommend anyone that's into puzzle games, into mystery games, things like Return of the Obra Dinn or Ace Attorney. You'll really like Case of the Golden Idol.
What are you playing it on, Steve?
Steam Deck. It plays
Are you
perfectly on the
using
Steam Deck.
Are you using? Is it touchscreen? Or are you using the touch pads, or is it a Steam controller game?
It works with touchscreen, touchpads, mouse, keyboard, or controller. The controller is just works as if it's like a mouse cursor moving around the screen.
Okay, yep.
You can zoom in and out with the up and down arrows on the D-pad, and then you can click X to bring up the panel to switch between thinking and exploration mode. It's pretty simple controls, but they work really well, and it maps perfectly fine to
I'd like to give this a go.
Controller.
Yeah, I think I'd like to give this one a go at some point.
Yeah, I looked up on how long to beat. It looks like it's about 6 hours, so hopefully one I'll be able to find some time for.
It's not too long if you know what you're doing and you can figure it out. There was a couple of puzzles I got properly stumped on, and there's a hint system in the game, and it like tries to put you off getting hints so much, then it makes you do a chore in order to get the hints. Like you have to drag 12 words to different items in order to get the hint, and then the hint that it gave me was something I already knew, so I then had to do another chore to get another hint. It was so frustrating, but that's the point. It really doesn't want you to use these hints, but they are there, and they are in the game if you do get stuck and you do need them. But they're pretty crap. I would recommend try and use your thinking power, or if you really need to, go look up like a walkthrough. I was really annoyed with myself. One of them was the fact that I was reading the sentence wrong, and when I read the sentence back after I found out what the answer was by looking it up on the internet, I was like, I'm an absolute idiot. Like I should have got that.
Don't you hate that? I had a moment like that with Ragnarok where there was a puzzle and I was like, surely this must be the way to do this. And I was trying to do the thing and I was like fucking it up. And I was like, okay, I must be wrong. So I went and found a video and someone just did exactly the thing I was doing right. And I was like, you gotta be fucking, like, I sat here for like 10 minutes trying to do this.
What was that?
It was the first geyser puzzle.
Oh yeah.
And there's like the second geyser, and you need to go up and hit it with the axe. And I was tossing the axe, and I was like, well, it's not freezing, so I must be doing something. I was just not hitting it at the right angle. And
You need to wait for it to have like a blue icon before you throw.
I'm such a dipshit. Like it was like I figured it out. Like, you know.
Well, it's better to look it up and realize you're an idiot instead of looking it up and realizing the game's glitched.
That's true. Yeah.
I remember when I played Little Nightmares. I spent half an hour in Little Nightmares 2 walking between 3 rooms. Like, what am I doing here? What am I supposed to do? I like, right, I'm looking it up. What am I supposed to do? It's like, pick up the item on the table. I was like, there's no item on the table. There's never been an item on that table. And the game had just glitched and put it in like back at the start of the level. And I was like, okay, great.
Love that. Love that for you.
Yeah. Happened twice.
But yeah, I think other similar games I can think that have like it's given me similar vibes was another game I really adored last year, which I think made it to my game of the year list, which was The Forgotten City. I don't know if you've played that one as well, Max.
No, I've heard of it, but I haven't played it.
Oh my God, that's another game I absolutely adore. It's so good. I just, yeah, it's phenomenal. Case of the Golden Isle, phenomenal game. I'm really enjoying it. The music's great. The art style, I didn't click with it immediately, but it's grown on me a
I
lot. It's
like it.
very much like an old point and click game from a PC, like early
It
PC
definitely
era.
reminds me of like a more fleshed out Monkey Island.
Yeah, it's like an MS-DOS style game.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's a weird looking game, but I do really like it.
It quote unquote looks like that in the way that like Shovel Knight quote unquote looks like an NES game. You know, like it's like okay, yeah, like it's like
clearly
in that
modern
style,
take on
but
it,
with like
yeah.
more animation and more color
Yeah.
variants, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then I got a code for the Entropy Center, which I played a little bit of, which is another environmental puzzler, similar to like a Portal style game.
Yeah,
So I'm looking
this
forward to
is
playing some more
right
of
up
that.
my alley.
Yeah, I'll be talking about that probably next week.
Excellent.
Nice. So we're like just under an hour. How do you guys feel about entertaining me talking about Marvel Snap for a few minutes?
A few minutes I can do.
All right.
I can't.
You've already spoken to me about this off mic.
I know.
It does sound appealing.
I really
as long
love
as you
it.
don't convince me, as long as you don't convince me to play it, because I really don't want to play it.
Max, I'm going to convince you to play it. It's really good. So
Max, I hate Marvel, and even
really?
I'm like wanting to play. I just don't get into.
He's so full of
superheroes,
shit.
Really.
He hates it,
I am a
right?
little
Like
bit full of shit.
he doesn't know. He's never the only Marvel stuff he's ever interacted with, he's liked all of it. So
he's gonna love Marvel Snap then, isn't he?
I think he is.
Yeah, probably will like Marvel stuff.
I'll say this. I don't think you have to like Marvel at all for it to be a game that's worth playing. Like it's if you are at all a fan of, or even if you're not, of like your standard trading card games, I think it's well worth your time. It is one of the most like creative TCGs I think I've ever played. Where like I've talked on the show about how I play Magic the Gathering. I've played Magic since I was very young. I played Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh growing up. Sorry?
That's impressive. And you're married. That's impressive.
I know, right, dude? I'm also in a band, so it balances out a little bit. But like, I was in a ska band for 10 years, so I don't know why any girl has ever talked to me. But yeah, here we go. I got a wife, so. But all of those games, or those three, right, which are like I think the big three that people probably think of. Obviously, there's others out there like your Dragon Ball Z's and all that kind of stuff too. But a lot of them are like fairly similar. Right? Like it's a lot of like you have energy to play creatures and there are life points and whoever kills the other player wins the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this game is very, very different. So each game is only 6 turns. That the max a match can be, unless there's an environmental reason, is 6 turns. So matches are really quick. Right? Even if everybody takes the max amount of time they can take to take a turn, matches are about 5 minutes at most, which I think is great. It makes it really easy to, like, if you are, like, just waiting in line at the doctor's office or something like that, and you just want something quick to do, like, play on your phone mobile game style, super great for that. But I also, like, it's become my go-to TV game lately, where, like, anytime that I'm trying to, like, I'm not maybe in the mood for something as involved as God of War, or I'm too tired to play something as like twitchy as, like, I don't know, like Shovel Knight Dig, which I've got on the Steam Deck right now, or like Splatoon or Multiverses or whatever. This is like perfect, right? Because it's a turn-based, like it's a thinking game, but it's not a game that requires that quick, twitch type action once you're tired. And the whole conceit of it is, rather than dealing with like life points or whatever, each player has, I think each deck is 12 cards. And there are these 3 zones basically, right? And each zone gets revealed as the turns go. So on turn 1, the first zone reveals. On turn 2, the second zone reveals. Turn 3, the third zone reveals. And each one of them has an environmental like trigger that will like impact the flow of the game. So, like, for example, there's one that they have right now that is, like, getting a lot of play because they added it just now, and it's, like, a tie-in with the Wakanda Forever, the next Black Panther movie. And the thing that happens on this zone is whenever you play a card, you double its power, right?
Right.
There's another one where if you play a card in this zone, your opponent gets a copy of it. There's another one where if you play a card in this zone, you make a random copy in another zone. And then there's like some that are like, if you play a card here, you'll get 3 rock cards shuffled into your deck, which are cards that are 0/1, like they cost 1 to play, but they have no abilities. They're useless. They just take up space. And each zone, you can only play 4 cards before it's full. So the whole thing is that you want to, by turn 6, control 2 zones and have the highest score in those 2 zones. So that's like where the strategy of it comes in. And what's so interesting about it is that even if you use the same deck every single time, right? I have one main deck that I use, and then I have a secondary one that I've been playing with just for variety's sake. But because the zones are different every single time, no 2 games are the same, even if you're using the same cards, right? There's an incredible amount of variance and replay value just because of that simple choice. And it makes for a really, really deep strategy because, like, a lot of it'll come down to, like, it's similar to, like, competitive Pokemon in that, like, prediction is a big part of it, is, like, knowing what the other player could conceivably play and then trying to, like, outthink them and being like, all right, well, you know, I'm winning in these 2 zones, and I can bait them into thinking I'm trying to win this one, and then really I'll double down on the 2 that I already am winning, and I'll win.
Smart.
Or like, oh, I know that the most that they can play in a single, like the highest powered card in the game, right, is only, I think, 14 points or something like that. So I know that they can't beat me in 1 turn here, right? So, like, I don't need to put a card here. I'll put a card over here, right? Or like things like that. And it's such a good fucking game. And, like, the loop of how easy it is to play and how easy it is to make adjustments to your deck. And it's really not, like, pay to win at all. Like, all the microtransactions are limited to either the season pass, which will help you unlock cards faster, but it's not a lot of cards. Like, each season pass, I think, gives you 2 or 3 new cards. And then the big thing is, like, they have these cosmetic variants that are just the same cards, but with, like, different art. And they've collaborated with, like, all these great comic book artists. So there's, like, a lot of different cool styles. Like, there's one that this one person did where it's, like, all pixel art. So you could have, like, a whole pixel deck if you want.
Oh,
like,
nice.
Things
Okay.
like that. But all those are, like, that's the incentive for the money, right? So, like,
Yeah.
Even if you were like, I'm never going to do a season pass, like, I don't want to spend money, all the cards you get in a season pass, you can unlock just from leveling up. And the only way to level up is by playing. So, you know, there's really not...
I hate these play-to-win games. I hate them so much.
And I think that's the thing, right? Is, like, there's only, I think, like, 100 cards right now, too. So it's, like, there's a lot of variety, but it's also, like, a lot of the best, most viable cards are cards that you'll get just from playing through the, you know, the first couple levels.
It makes me wonder, as an ex-Hearthstone player, how they're going to deal with bloat, because there's got to be a certain point where I remember I was playing and I had all my decks and it was great, and then they added like a new update and they added so many new cards and the meta completely changed. All of a sudden I was just out of the game. I had to start buying a load of new packs. I think there was like a Jade Idol pack that came out, or an expansion that came out, and I just got completely meted out of the game. And I do worry with these kind of games that at a certain point where they're doing, you know, oh, it's only 100 cards you can play to unlock them, and then when there's 1,000 cards, you know, that's when you're really going to be like, well, maybe I should just buy these cards then.
The thing that I think is interesting, so you can't actually buy cards. Like, the only thing you could do is you could pay for the season pass, and then you can pay to level up the season pass. But like I said, you're only unlocking a couple cards through the season pass anyway. The thing that I think is interesting is, from what it seems, they're adding cards 1 or 2 cards at a time, not doing like sets like in Magic or in Hearthstone or whatever, where it's like, here's a whole new block of cards that you need to go in and buy in for, right? And there's all these new mechanics and it's like all that shit. And it doesn't seem to be their release plan. Like, since I've been playing, there's been 2 paid seasons that you could take a part of. So there's only been 4 cards added since I started playing, which is pretty manageable, right, to keep up with. But yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting. It's much better than I thought it was gonna be. And I tried to get in the beta and everything because when they first revealed it, I thought it looked interesting. But it's really knocked my socks off. Like I really dig it. I guarantee it will be on my Game of the Year list. And I think it's easy to think like, oh yeah, it's like a fun little mobile game. Like no, like this is a legit great TCG. And if you like that kind of game at all, then I really think you owe it to yourself to check it out. And I think even if you don't, even if you found those kind of games to be impenetrable, I think it's simple enough that it's easy to pick up. And I think it could be a good entry point for you. And it is, free to play, and like, unless you want to go in on the season passes like I have, you could, I think if you right now played the same amount of hours that I have played and didn't pay for the season passes like I did, the only difference between our setups would be I would have like 2 more cards than you.
Okay, that's good.
Not bad.
Well, maybe it's worth investing time in as well as money then.
I think so. Like I said, I did both season passes that were available in the time I've been playing, so I've put like $20 into it. No regrets. I'm playing this game a lot, like every day, and it's like been perfect for me for like, if I'm on like a work call and I'm waiting for my turn to talk, right? Get a game in real quick, I'm upstairs, I'm cooking something, I'm waiting for something to be done so I can put in the next thing or put it into a pod or whatever, right? Oh, cool. Pull up a match, play it real quick. Perfect for that. Or like, again, like I was chilling in bed last night and I was like, I'm done playing God of War. I want to cool off, watch some Bob's Burgers. Let me play this for an hour while I chill out, and it's like in the way that I was playing Magic the Gathering Arena or whatever, like it's totally overtaken that because I had the exact same situation that you had, Max, where I had a deck I was using in ranked in Magic for a while, and the new set came out and all my cards became illegal for standard, and I was like, well,
yeah, pointless.
I don't feel like making a new deck, so I guess I'm out for now. And then this came along and I'm like, well, I mean, I'm having so much fun with this. Like, why would I stop playing it? And like, I think I'm just in now. I think this is going to be one of those games that's a regular part of my diet.
Good. Well, hopefully they keep it up, and maybe I'll give it a go then.
Yeah, get into it. I want more friends that play. Like, I only know like 2 people that are playing, and like, get in here. Let's do it. Let's mix it up.
Yeah, fingers crossed it sticks around, because I know mobile games can be quite fleeting and disappear.
Yeah.
But
so, or not, right?
Yeah, or not. Yeah, it goes one way or the other. There never seems to be like a moderately successful game that can stick around. It's either got to be astronomical success or a complete failure.
And I'll tell you what, like, they're putting the marketing budget behind it. You can't get away from ads for this fucking game right now. I see, and like, I already play it, and I'm like, I'm still seeing them everywhere. I'm like, guys, you already got me. Like, stop, like. But yeah, if I can evangelize, for any folks that are like, Tamberwolf, if you're listening, you should play this game. Like, this game fucking rules, So that's my pitch for it. I'm sure you've seen ads for it and been like, what is this game? Like, who's this for? I'm telling you, this game slaps. Like, this is, I think, going to be surprisingly high on my Game of the Year list. Let's put it that way. So that's my time. Marvel Snap. Check it out. It's fun. All right. So, Max, thank you for joining us here on 2 shows this week. It's absolute gangbusters, buddy. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
4 shows in the last 2 weeks.
I know.
It's impressive.
You're killing it. Yeah, I'm glad. I was really excited to talk about God of War, and I'm glad you were here to indulge me. I thought that was a really fun conversation. So we'll have to have you back on in a couple of weeks when we're both a little bit further in. Maybe we'll do a spoiler cast or something.
When we get it done, let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm holding you to that one.
Absolutely.
All right. So, guys, thank you for joining us here on another episode of FlipScreen Games Podcast. Remember, if you want to get in touch, if you want to check out some more content, if you want to become a Patreon producer, whatever you want to do, head over to flipscreen.games. That's the website where you will find us and all the stuff we do all over the web. Go follow Max on Twitter. We'll have a link down in the description down below. For the show, for the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.
Bye.